Hello and welcome to the slightly later than usual Falling Apart podcast 90 plus 15 instant-ish reaction to the Millwall Leeds game where Millwall beat us 1-0. You've got Sam and Jim today. Jim, I'm really hoping this doesn't last 15 minutes as I would much prefer to completely forget about that game.
Yeah, you're not the only one, to be honest. Can I also say, is it like now customary, no matter who is hosting, to open up basically as though it's Ricardo?
Absolutely. Hello. We're just prepping for our career in show business.
Yeah, true.
Now, I do have a confession to make before we get into the game. I was on a train back. I wasn't actually too far from the den. I was working in Canary Wharf yesterday. Not that I'm a big shot or anything like that.
Big buildings, yeah?
Big buildings. And I was on a train back from London at about 8 o'clock last night, so I didn't get to see the game. But I have watched the 3 minutes of Leeds United highlights or the 2 minutes of Millwall highlights, which I think was a good explanation of how the game panned out. But I'm not going to lie to you, I'm pretty happy that I missed the game last night.
You will be as well, because it was, let's just say it was a little bit of a drab affair, if I'm being completely honest. Also, do you not travel first class? Because surely I'd imagine you'd have had like an iPad, probably got your dodgy Fire Stick.
Shut the fuck up.
You could have quite easily watched it in the first class carriage.
I was one of those desperately scrolling Twitter to try and find any dodgy stream. But yeah, unfortunately, the Wi-Fi on LNER is shit. And my 4G is also shit, so the amount of tunnels you go through on the way back from London. So yeah, thankfully, it was not to be.
Okay, fair enough.
What I will say from the highlights, though, is, as I say, Leeds' highlights were 3 minutes. It only showed the Tanganga goal, and then everything else was Leeds. And the Millwall highlights were 2 minutes, which I think does say a lot in terms of there wasn't an awful lot from Millwall that game. But ultimately, they got what mattered, which was the goal and the win. What was your take on last night? Because I know you saw more of the game than I did.
In a word, absolute dog shit.
Is that 2 words or 1 word?
It depends. If you're illiterate, you might put dog and shit together and just class it as 1 word like me. But no, that I guess that's a little bit harsh. I wasn't overly confident going down there because I think London, over the last 20, 30 games, we've lost around 70% of them down in the capital. So that was always hanging over. And I think there's just a real lack of confidence in terms of consistency from us. Which team's going to turn up? Is it going to be the team that plays really well, has a load of chances and still doesn't win? Is it going to be the team that plays well and scores a few goals like what we saw at home the other week? Or is it going to be the team that turned up last night? Is it going to be the one that it's a very dull Bristol City type game, a load of possession, load of shots, but if I'm being completely honest, if you read the stats, you'd think, we were unlucky. But actually, there was nothing in the game. It wasn't a good game to watch at all. I think in the first half, there was 2 relatively good chances that stand out to me. One for Brendan Aronson at the edge of the box, which was like a trickler into the keeper's hands. And then another one from Pirro, which he somehow managed to get a shot off with 3 defenders in front of him. But other than that, mate, it was exactly as I sort of expected it to go. I just didn't think that we'd lose. I thought worst case scenario, we'd get a point.
Yeah, I was scrolling Twitter last night, and in between all of the tweets about Donald Trump, there was a few tweets about this is typical of Farke. He's got these games in him. We'd have an amazing performance at the weekend, and then you can almost guarantee there's going to be a pretty dull performance following that up. So yeah, it's not shocking. What I'd also say is we didn't get to preview the Millwall game just because of the quick succession of games. Actually, if you look at how Millwall have been performing over the last few games, I think they've won 4 in a row now. They're not to be taken lightly. They are a pretty decent team. They're obviously very well organised, well set up, and they've been doing pretty well.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they have. They've got the scalp of Burnley and now us. So they're no mugs whatsoever, and they've jumped, like you say, I think you just said they've jumped into the playoffs now, or
the 5th now, yeah.
So up into 5th. Decent team away from home, but again, it makes me pose the question. If you want to win this league, can you be as inconsistent in terms of performance level over the course of a whole season? It's not panic stations, but at the same time, that's probably 2 opportunities now to open a gap on the top. And I'm sure I remember us speaking about this. We didn't do the pod last season, but I think throughout the season, we spoke about this quite a bit, where we had opportunities to open up a gap and we didn't take them. And ultimately, at the end of the season, that's what led to us being in the playoffs and losing in the final.
Yeah, totally. Should we come on to the goal then? So again, I've just seen the highlights. So from what it was a long ball up from Millwall, a bit of a shock that they won the ball from a header in the box. Came down to Tanganga, who I thought was a centre half, which I might have got that wrong, who kind of put a bit of a toe punt at it and it went into the bottom right.
Well, he was playing right back last night, and for the most of the game, actually, and it pains me to say this, he had Nonto in his pocket, because he's a very strong player, isn't he? And he was at Spurs that he was at, and he got a few games with Spurs when they had injuries, and he was touted to be one of the next big things, and it never really seemed to happen. So when he did go to Millwall, I was quite surprised that he'd not joined a team up at the top end of the Championship. But what I will say about the finish is, and it comes back to, you've said this now a couple of times on the pods, if we look at their stats, they had 3 shots on target. They had 25% possession. One of them 3 shots on target that they had, they scored from. And that's what punishes you in this league, isn't it? If we have all these chances, if we look at our stats, we had 14 shots and only 4 of them were on target.
Yeah. And I think they were all outside the box, weren't they? Or pretty much most of them were outside the box.
Yeah, exactly. Pass-wise, this is like, in terms of what we typically tend to do, is we keep the ball a lot, but sometimes we have the odd game where there's no real substance behind it. Last night was that case. Millwall had 212 passes. We had 640. 88% of them were accurate. So a lot of passes with very little substance, and we got punished. So fair play to him. He slotted it away.
Another key moment of the game was the Perot offside goal. That was really small on my screen, but it looked really tight. Did you get a closer look at that? And I saw a bit on Twitter about whether it was or wasn't offside.
Well, without looking at all the different angles that you'd typically get with like VAR, it looked very close to me. It looked as though it could have been onside. And again, a big shout out to Pirro, because he had pretty much one opportunity and he scored it, albeit outside. But yeah, we can't. It's a big talking point, but at the same time, the performance just wasn't at the level that it should have been for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple of other things I think is pretty worth discussing. So I know we normally do man of the match, but it doesn't feel quite right to do man of the match. But I have seen some rumblings again on Twitter around whether Byram should be starting right back instead of Bogle. And also that Nonto was a little bit sluggish last night.
It just Nonto looked like he was just trying a little bit too hard. Sometimes when you see, and I know it sounds weird to say that, but sometimes when you see people in a game and they're just trying to make something happen a little bit too much rather than being natural. He was trying, and like I say, he was up against Tanganga for most of the first half, didn't give him anything whatsoever. As for Bogle, it just wasn't a very good game for him. I know that people are going to be straight away on X and they're going to be putting tweets out saying, should he be starting, shouldn't he? Naturally, that's coming because Sam Byron has just had 2 very good games for us in his absence.
Definitely. And you see it as well, like all the Farkout brigade has come back as well. So yeah, it happens after every defeat.
It's the meltdown, isn't it?
It always is. And it's like the league is over. But I don't think we should look at it that way. As I say, Millwall are up to 5th in the league. They've won the last 4. So it was never going to be easy going down there on a Wednesday night and trying to get a result. The stats say that we should have definitely got something out of the game. But like you say, it's being able to put the ball in the back of the net is the key thing. Ricardo is actually in China at the moment. He's out for dinner as we're speaking right now. Is that your Trump impression?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to have some sort of Trump reference in this one because we've not spoke about it.
But he has texted me privately. Okay. You'll be pleased to know. And he said, make sure you rib Jim about saying that we're definitely going to win the league and now saying that we're not going to win the league. And he's highlighted a text that you sent. I actually can't see when you sent the text, but I'm guessing it was back before October. See now what October, lads. Come out of that with points and we're winning the league.
Can I just say it's a very fucking loose grab from him? He'd be better off just shutting the fuck up and enjoying it than trying to pick faults with that. And actually, the point was really valid. In October, our running in terms of games and people that we were playing was really tough. And I think we lost against Burnley. We beat Sheffield United. Do I think we're going to win the league? If you want my honest answer right now, unless something changes, I don't think over the course of the whole season, Because remember, we've already had so many curveballs already. We've had things like Solomon's slip. We've had the fact that Aronson was through one-on-one in the last minute after equalising. Things that we've spoke about previously. I worry that we're not going to have enough consistency to win this league. It's a tough league. And I feel like all these little opportunities that we're missing to pull away slightly before Christmas, which typically tends to be our hardest period of a season, could come back to bite us.
Yeah.
Ricardo is not on the podcast, so he can just take his comments and shove them up his ass.
What I would say is we are hoping to record our main podcast at some stage today.
Yes.
I'd say Ricardo is out for dinner. And he goes to China each year for work, and he always gets absolutely arseholed when he's out for dinner. So I'm really hoping he comes on the podcast because he's going to make an absolute tit of himself.
Yeah, that'll be brilliant.
I suppose just to finish this then, so just looking at the table, so we are third with 26 points. Ahead of us are Sheffield United on 28 and Sunderland on 30. I don't know if you saw the games, but Sheffield United got a late winner away at Bristol City on Tuesday night, and Sunderland drew 0-0 last night away at Preston. So we're not a million miles away from the top two. Burnley in fourth have a game in hand on us, and they could go above us on goal difference. They're playing tonight against West Brom. And then, as I say, Millwall in fifth, I think arguably have got the best form in the league at the moment. And then Watford make up the last playoff place. I know if Tom was here, he'd say it's too early to look at the table, but I think it's sometimes good just to see how we're tracking along.
Yeah, of course it is. And what's really positive for us is that come Saturday, which I know you'll touch on the main pod, we've got a second from bottom and haven't won a game in 5. So I'd say that's really positive, but we probably know what could potentially happen with that. But yeah, overall, on your comments around the table, we're not in a bad position, are we? It's just frustrating to see that we could have potentially been on like 32 points now if we'd have beat Bristol and won last night. 30 points if we'd have drawn last night. But plenty more games to go. We're only 14 games in.
Yeah.
To keep the faith. What I will say, though, is, and we've not touched on this, but did you hear Fark doesn't do himself any favours, really, in his press conferences after the games, does he?
He doesn't. But that's just the way he is. He's always that style, win, lose or draw.
He's like, I'm fine with what the result was like. I thought we had a really good first half, and it's like, well, what were you watching to think that? Just because we can string a bunch of passes together doesn't mean it was an amazing half.
Yeah. But anyway, if you're like me and you just watch the highlights and Fark's comments, it kind of rings true because you just see all Leeds and then one Millwall goal and then all Leeds again. So yeah, if you're a plastic fan like I am, that's what you get to see. Do you know what? I'm going to give an insight to listeners here because I was thinking, actually, it's felt like a fairly good running order for the podcast. And usually we kind of jump around, but I do actually want to jump around again because one thing that, again, I saw a lot on X last night was around corners. We had 12 corners to their 2. And again, there's a lot of hoo-ha about why can't we score from set pieces. Now, what I'd say is Millwall were a big team, so it was always going to be difficult, but it's been a common theme for many years now, hasn't it? But yeah, I'm just wondering if we can go to Arsenal and get their set piece coach so we can actually start bloody scoring from some of these opportunities.
Well, I mean, let's put a spin on that, Sam. If you were in your job right now, which I know you're second in line at one of the biggest companies in the world.
Shut the fuck up.
If you were in your job and delivering similar results that our set piece taker is delivering, you'd have been out of that door about 12 months ago. Because not just that, what free kicks can you remember us scoring barring Gruev's in the playoffs?
Exactly. And I go back to the likes of Eddie Lewis, Ian Hart. I mean, I'm guessing they weren't, but it felt like they were popping in free kicks all the time.
Yeah,
we just don't do that anymore.
No, we don't. And remember, we did have a set ball specialist with us under Sam Greenwood, who apparently was brilliant with set pieces. I think he scored a few set pieces since his life. And I can't remember even him doing anything. And it's not as though we're a small team. We've got the sexy pirate, big lad. We've got the Welsh warrior as well. He's a big lad as well. We have got some half decent sized lads. We just can't seem to find them from any sort of set piece, can we?
Yeah. Maybe a feature for a main pod at some point in the future, because the lack of goals from set pieces will hinder us. Yeah,
it will. I mean, it's the equivalent of going into Winston's and coming out with nothing in there.
What's Winston's?
No, I'm not too sure. I've just heard someone in the past.
Cool. I think that's enough from us.
Finish on widows.
Let's finish on Winston's. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch, reach out to us on X at Falling Apart Pod, and we'll be with you for the main pod, hopefully tomorrow morning.
Lovely.
Catch you soon.
It's all right.